From Forbes breaking news, dim lawmaker warns of global warming is hurting farms. They're battling wildfires, floods, and droughts. I guess there's a little bit of a typo there. And of course, a climate change banner, so you know that it's super serious. And I've kind of made this joke in the past that it doesn't matter. Drought, flood, hurricane, tornado, anything can just be, blamed on climate change. And I could also argue that the climate hysteria, the green agenda, is more damaging than the transformer agenda. Well, perhaps not physically, but at least with the Transformers, there is a baseline. There is man, woman, child. It doesn't work any other way. You can show somebody, here's what's going to happen if you go through with this. Here's why it doesn't work. But with the climate hysteria, they can just say, oh, well, yeah, that too is because of climate change. There's nothing to compare it to. There is no baseline, like I said, of reality.
Underwood's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Farmers in Northern Illinois, where I grew up and I now have the honor of representing in Congress, are on the front lines of the climate crisis. Across America, farmers are battling wildfires and floods and drought and extreme weather connected to...
Yep, so doesn't matter. Extreme weather that's been going on for decades, hundreds, millennia, since the beginning of time, we now can blame that on people who drive trucks.
Climate change. These farmers in my district and throughout the country play a pivotal role in delivering climate solutions that will help preserve our planet for our kids.
And, of course, the climate change agenda is a little bit more efficient way to usher in communism because they want us to believe that we can sort of change the weather if we just pay a little bit more in taxes. Of course, your tax funds are also going to go to providing illegals with transgender surgeries or whatever, so it's a lose-lose.
To support them, I wrote the bipartisan Farmers Fighting Climate Change Act, which was signed into law as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. This legislation directed U.S.
And there you have it. The Inflation Reduction Act is, of course, a communism bill, and this woman, who I have never heard of, is part of that regime quite clearly.
USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service to establish climate change mitigation bundles within the Conservation Stewardship Program, or CSP. These bundles compensate farmers for agricultural practices.
And even if this is all real, even if the sun monster is coming to get everybody, do you really think that this woman and her little houndstooth suit or whatever and all these bureaucrats are going to be able to stop the sun monster, especially considering China and India, they don't care a lick about it. And these people don't care either.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you,
we don't care.
Jerry.
They're just trying to line their pockets and, with your money.
That reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase carbon sequestration, such as cover crops and no-till farming. These techniques not only combat climate change, but also improve soil health and water quality, providing broad benefits to farmers. We know the value of supporting farmers in their fight against climate change. So it was incredibly discouraging to see House Republicans.
So you can't just support farmers. You have to support farmers in their fight against climate change. And I'd be willing to bet that most of the farmers in the heartland of America, in smelly old flyover white rural rage country, they're not too worried about climate change. But this carbon-based life form wants you to believe they truly care about. Not only does this lady and her ilk and the rest of the bureaucrats in that room, they really care about climate change, but the farmers in the middle of the country are worried about it too. Yeah, right.
Republicans include a $30 million rescission from the Natural Resources Conservation Service in fiscal year 2024. This rescission is especially damaging coming at this point, as many farmers have already begun using CSP bundles. Mr. Secretary, how will cuts to NRCS affect the availability and effectiveness of CSP bundles and your staff's ability to help farmers?
Well, over time, there's a direct correlation between the number of people available to help farmers and the amount of help they get. We've seen with the additional resources from the IRA and the additional people that we've been able to hire as a result of the IRA and the infrastructure law that we've seen a significant and historic increase in the number of conservation contracts. So there's a direct correlation between the number of people and the number of contracts.
Getting the word.
Okay, I guess like a nice little bit of word salad back and forth between this weirdo bureaucrat and I guess that farmer guy.
Out about these programs and the incentives that they offer must be a top priority for USDA. Nearly 30% of farmers are unaware of the voluntary conservation practices that could help them earn more money while improving soil health and
doubt it. And look, I am not against, conserving or being more efficient, not by any stretch of the imagination, but it's pretty clear that this weirdo commie agenda is every single thing they do works towards the same goal. And she says, well, they're going to save money by doing it this way. It's a kind of like, oh yeah, well, electric cars are cheaper after you spend $100,000. You're gonna save that in gas, but then we're also going to hike the price of electricity if we can, because as we all know by now that in California specifically, they don't really, the power grid's not really equipped to support everybody driving around in an electric car. So I guess what you're gonna have to do is just stay in your pod and eat the bugs.
Fighting climate change at the same time. What outreach efforts are underway at USDA to increase farmers' awareness of and participation in the Conservation Stewardship Program, and what resources would USDA need to improve its outreach efforts this year?
We've entered into over 120 contracts with organizations and groups that have connection with historically underserved beginning farmers, veteran farmers, the folks who may not be able to be aware of the programs. Over 75,000 contacts have been made. There have been a number of workshops. There have been a number of webinars. There have been a number of about over 9,000 of those individuals receive technical assistance.
Great.
And we have hundreds of them signing up for contracts. So
okay, yeah. So I'm capitulating to the agenda. Do you like it? Am I doing good?
continuing that effort would be critically important.
So what I hear you say is that this is popular. People want these resources. They want to sign up with USDA, and we have an opportunity to expand our reach with additional resources for outreach.
Right.
Look, I'm sorry, and they've done this to themselves, but does anybody think that this lady, come on, bro, she's cloaked in several layers of protection. She's a woman of color, so you can't say anything about it, right? It's like they prop these people up to push their agenda, on so many levels. And it's like back in the old days, they used to just put a kid out there, right? We still have Greta, who I guess is not a kid anymore. But several years ago, there was, like first graders or second graders or something crazy protesting in the streets of San Francisco. And they obviously don't know what they're talking about, but they are a shield for the rest of the weirdos to push their propaganda.
Record levels.
Excellent. So I'm encouraged to see that the president's budget request includes $985 million for NRCS.
Oh, there we go. Yep, the president's budget. We need more money to fight the sun monster. Usher in communism. Perfect. This woman, who looks like she could be Karine Jean-Pierre's sister or something, says we just need a little bit more money to fight the sun monster.
Plans to hire thousands of employees to help implement farmer-friendly policies included in the Inflation Reduction Act. Could you elaborate on why a fully staffed NRCS is essential for supporting and empowering our farmers nationwide?
The ability to determine precisely what...
Also, I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked here, but the Inflation Reduction Act, they couldn't make it any more transparent. That nothing. That was, if you weren't aware before the Inflation Reduction Act, the CARES Act, and, all these fancy names, which we all know, right? Your facade, your mask, your disguise, it's all run its course. We can see through it now. It took a little while, but it's over. And the Inflation Reduction Act, which of course is just code word for, let's do communism.
What kind of opportunities are available? I've just got a list here of 20 different climate-smart agriculture practices that the NRCS...
Climate-smart agriculture practices? It means absolutely nothing. And this guy is like groveling at her feet like, look, I have 20 things about the sun monster here. And she's like, oh, excellent. It doesn't make any sense. And it's never going to be enough, right? This guy could say, we did this. We're going greenhouse and greenhouse emissions, all this stuff. But they would never say, all right, I guess that's pretty good. We can move on from this. Mission accomplished. Never going to happen.
And under each one of these categories, there's multiple choices. It can be complicated. And so it's important for folks to have the ability to talk to an NRCS person.
Yes.
They have their crop specialist, but maybe some farmers, small and mid-sized farmers, can't afford a crop specialist to provide that technical assistance, so they rely on the NRCS folks to provide them this is what you should do, this is what you think about doing.
Yes, sir. Well, if you could share that list with our office, we'll be sure to circulate that among our colleagues on the committee. I want to change gears. The USDA's Office of Tribal Relations plays a critical role in serving as a dedicated point of contact for tribal issues, ensuring that
Here we go. Now she's going to roll in the Native Americans into this propaganda burrito. Oh, it's disgusting. These people are despicable.
USDA programs and initiatives are developed in consultation with American Indian and Alaska Native communities. Unfortunately, in fiscal year 24, House Republicans fell short of fully funding the Office of Tribal Relations, posing significant challenges to its ability to carry out its essential work. I'm deeply concerned about the office's capacity to maintain critical functions and adequate.
No, you're not. You're not deeply concerned. You're reading off a paper. If you were deeply concerned, you could speak off the top of the head. You could talk from the heart, but you're not. You're reading your propaganda that somebody gave you that I highly doubt she even came up. What do these people do all day? Right? Does she answer her own emails? Does she take her own phone calls? What are they doing all day?
Adequately support our Indigenous communities. How does the Office of Tribal Relations plan to sustain its work in light of current funding, and what impact do you anticipate this will have on our tribal communities?
And as I already mentioned, it will never be enough. So she can go on there and say, oh, yes, good, excellent, okay, good thing. But then, don't worry, there's more. How are you protecting the Indians?
We'll do our level best to make sure that we continue to focus on food sovereignty, continue to focus on economic opportunity with tribes. But the reality is, if you limit the resources, you're going to ultimately limit the capacity of that office to do all the work that it's interested in doing and that people in tribes are interested in having done.
Yes, sir. Well, as we prepare for the fiscal year 25 bill, I urge my Republican colleagues to carefully consider the ramifications of underfunding this critical office. Our farmers deserve our full support.
Oh, surprise, surprise. We need more money. Who can take any of these people seriously? And that's why I think that, I go back and forth, but this climate hysteria could be more detrimental than the Transformers because it will never end. The Transformer stuff is kind of facing a backlash, and Bo Jiden and the regime are grasping at straws, calling Easter Transgender Day of Visibility, and everybody can see through it. That's their last vestige of people. But this, they're going to continue to push because nobody can say concretely that doesn't work. They're just going to move the goalposts, right? Oh, where the world's going to end in 12 years. Oh, the water levels are going to rise. But meanwhile, Barry O and some of his regime accomplices are going to buy beachfront property on Martha's Vineyard and make sure that the migrants can't get there.